right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the premiere episode of Ragchew. My name is George McGaffin.
And I'm Mike Finnegan.
Hey, that's about as good as we're going to get for an intro on the first episode. This is,
So,
oh no,
I
go
mean,
ahead. Go ahead.
well, this episode is all about introductions.
It
So,
is.
I mean, from the top here, I imagine the first thing that anybody's going to ask when they're watching this is, what's a ragchew? Is it dirty?
Yes, please explain that because that went way over my head as well.
All right. So, for those who are unaware, in amateur radio parlance, a ragchew is just a conversation had by two ham radio operators on the air. And in building up for this program here with you, George, I've been trying to think of appropriate names for how do you say you're just chumming it with your buddy in a nice, simple, elegant way. And I really was going for that like Kodak like type of recognition, something where it's simple but straightforward. And yeah, I was in Dayton, Ohio this past May at the National Hamvention in Xenia. And it came to me, I was like, all right, no, seriously, this is the perfect name because it describes everything down to a simple detail. And the best part is, we haven't even told the listeners what we're doing.
No, we haven't, which is a great little segue because what we're doing essentially is just this. This is a brand new, different style of podcasting. These days, everybody wants to do a rewatch podcast or a podcast about something super specific. Ours is the complete opposite of that. We're just going to talk about real life, anything that's going on. If we saw a movie that we liked and we want to share that, if we heard a new song, which great, that just popped into my head. Did you hear Eminem's new album that dropped today?
No, I haven't heard anything from it yet outside of the track that you had on your Wake and Bake
Yes, yes. For
and
those that don't
Houdini.
know, yes, for those that don't know, I do host a wake and bake show every Monday and Friday on Cheech and Chong's Bowlmates platform. And yeah, I did have one of the songs on there today. Guilty Conscience 2 is the song that I played on the show today. Man, it's good. It's real good. There's a couple of tracks that I'm gonna kind of stay away from. And if you look at the track listing, you'll know why. I would think that you'll figure it out, Mike. I'm not necessarily going to put that out there now, but yeah, there's a couple tracks that the titles make me a little, I'm not a 18-year-old kid anymore. There's certain things I just don't want to necessarily hear, so I won't listen to those tracks. But that one in particular, that Guilty Conscience 2, was really well done because it was his Slim Shady side arguing with the Marshall Mathers side. And it was
Right.
really different and really super interesting.
Now, what really gets my goat, right, is I think, and when you look at Eminem's professional trajectory, he's gone to himself in this point where he doesn't have to rap. He could retire.
Yeah.
And instead of retiring, he's instead retiring the alter ego, Slim Shady. And I think there's going to be some reckoning with this album, in part because Slim Shady was such a controversial alter ego to begin with.
Yes.
Um, and I'll explore the track listings in the album later. But my big thing is, all right, how does he uh come to grips with being Marshall Mathers when there's still a contingent of fans that want to see Slim Shady? And I really think this is like an introspective album more than anything.
Yeah.
Like, you guys want Slim Shady, fine, but I promise you're not going to like it.
Yeah. And that's basically what Guilty Conscience was kind of all about, that particular song. And yeah, you know what? I wasn't gonna say, but I might as well say the two tracks I'm staying away from, they're two tracks back to back. One is called Lucifer, and
Okay.
the other one's called Antichrist.
And you want to know something? I bet you those are two different distinct names that he was called in the course of his career. So to come to that reckoning, right, is is he Lucifer or is he not? And likewise, going with the Antichrist, I mean, let's look back at the late 90s, early 2000s. There was a lot of talk of Antichrist in the arts. If we look at people
Yeah.
like Marilyn Manson,
Hmm.
especially Marilyn Manson after
Yeah, that's
Columbine.
big time, big time. Yeah, I remember they were really trying to lynch mob him after Columbine. That I got my heart went out to him because like he's just a guy,
He,
excuse me, he's just a guy making music. It's not his
and
fault that people took it and made it this extreme thing.
And even worse, somebody asked him point blank, "Oh, if you could sit down with the Columbine shooters right now, what would you say to them?" And he said, "I wouldn't say a thing. I would listen. It sounds like that they were very troubled souls, and that more
Mhm.
than anything, they were yearning for someone to hear their voice, and that ultimately they took the actions that they did out of that internalized feeling that there was nothing that could be done to save them." And we would be sitting here going crazy trying to debate the mental state of the Columbine shooters, nor do I
Yeah. Oh
suggest we
yeah.
try to.
No.
But we have this this moment of clarity that you see from Marilyn Manson at the time. And I don't think anybody was expecting it because they're expecting him to be the shock rocker. Like, oh man, you did that. Oh, shame you only killed so many people. Not that
Right.
but there's some people
Right.
out there that
Mhm.
are really have a twisted way of in perspective of the world. And at the end of the day, it just it's a real tragedy. And I say this as somebody that's loosely connected to the Columbine shootings. So
Oh,
one of
really?
one of my buddies in college, um, we were roommates, really good friend of mine, Adam. He went and graduated, moved out to Colorado for work. And few years go by and I get the word, hey, I'm getting married. And I wasn't in the wedding party, but I was allowed to join them for the bachelor party.
Mhm.
So I flew out to Colorado to participate in the festivities. And wonderful day. I mean, when you think about like days objectively, like in the events that happened, we woke up, we went to a gun range, we shot shotguns and clay pigeons, we got food, and then we went up to Black Rock in the Rockies, which is like this Las Vegas strip in the mountains.
Wow.
And I mean, I'm not a casino goer anymore, but it was just so photogenic to walk up past this hotel, George. One of them there, Maristar, has a rooftop spa that you could just sit up on the roof and enjoy nature and be in the mountains in a casino resort strip. It really is one of those like if you ever saw the South Park episode Red Man's Greed,
What was that one about?
um
I've seen most of the South Park, so I just don't know them by title.
so Red Man's Greed, no, this is disrespect to Native Americans by any stretch. I'm just calling
Oh.
it by the official title.
Yeah, no, no,
It
no.
was the episode where they had the casino set up and they went and bought all the property in South Park and they were going to demolish it to put in a freeway to Denver to go to the casinos. Um, Now it's not like that, but like if it's like if you were to take like a quarter mile or a third of a mile of the Las Vegas Strip, just pick it up out of the ground, plop it in the middle of the Rockies, and say, "There you go, spend your money." Um, but no, going back to the story here, while I was out shooting, right, I got to be introduced to the groom's party, and there was a fellow there by the name of Sam Granello, and while we were talking and everything, it just came up casually. It was like, "Oh yeah, not a big deal or anything, and don't make anything of it." But Sam survived Columbine. He was in the cafeteria when he had to take cover. I mean, he was one of the lucky souls that graduated.
That's something intense to go through. And I mean, you know what's sad about it too is like at the time, Columbine was a big deal because it was like the only one at the time. Now there's so many. I defy you to name five of them, and you know there's way more. Columbine,
Well,
Sandy Hook, off the top of my head.
oh, and
I
Sandy Hook was one of the worst days of my professional career, let me tell you. Um, so at the time I was living in Stamford, Connecticut. Um, and I was working for a company called FactSet Research Systems off of Route 7 in Norwalk. And one of their products that they offered was real-time news for stock traders.
hmm,
And so when I went and was working that day, I got a notification from the app. And initially I dismissed it because it came up under the BBC.
oh, wow.
And it said that there was a shooting in a elementary school in Connecticut. And I was just like, oh, this has got to be someone in test. This is, and then about a minute and a half goes by. Then the Associated Press breaks it. And at that moment, I did what I consider to be one of the hardest things I've ever done professionally. And that is to go on to the internal social network for the company and to give notice that, hey, some of you are going to need to do a wellness check. And I sat there the rest of the day, just I I don't want to say I was inconsolable. Like I wasn't broken down in tears, but I was just there was nothing there. Because the only thing I could think of was, my goodness, I just had to break the news to someone I work with that their kid may be dead.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank goodness they were able to account for all the kids and the employees. But
That's good.
it's still, I mean, you live with that nagging, like until you hear everyone's been accounted for, you just hope and pray.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it just, and then I get home that night and I turn on the news because, well, it's hard to avoid a
Yeah.
school shooting news story in America these days. But
Yeah.
um, that's when I found out that his dad lived about a block and a half away from me.
Wow.
So I had this like, oh my goodness, this kid, like, have I walked past him on the street and I literally just never saw him there? Like, it, there's always like, you start to have those moments of, if I did see him, what would I do? And if I did do anything, would that have changed the course of history? And it becomes this big brain screw. I had to go to therapy for it.
Well, yeah, I mean, it makes sense. I mean, that you were very close in proximity to that. That makes a lot of sense.
But at the end of the day, uh, you know, we learned what we did, and then everything else followed. But yeah, I don't strive to work in real-time news. I
Yeah.
think there's just so many bad news stories coming out that I would take it personally to heart. Like everyone's like, even though it's not my tragedy, when you read it, it enters your psyche and you feel like you share in someone else's tragedy. And that's
Oh, for
mentally
sure.
exhausting.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, people doom scroll all day, every day, just looking for the next thing, the next thing, the next thing, and that's unfortunately the world we live in. Which is why I don't watch the news, but I do in a sense though. I follow everything that's going on. My news program, because apparently I'm secretly a 75-year-old man, I watch the 700 Club because at least the
It,
700 Club, it takes a couple of the bigger stories and they lay that out, but then they have a lot of positive stories on there too of people, that recover from different things and all that stuff. And that's why I love watching that, because while I don't agree with, I made a post about it the other day actually, where I watched the show, um, and I like about 85% of it. I think that 85% of it's really good, but then there is that additional 15% that's just way too conservative for me. I don't mind if people are conservative, but there's a part of it that leans a little too far into that direction. But that's okay, because we need to get out of the mentality of, well, if I don't agree with every single point, you're a bad person.
right.
That's far too often. That's the case now, where people just hate each other because they disagree about one point or 2 points, when in reality, maybe you would agree on 85% of it if you just listen to the rest of it.
Now, what really like, and I'm glad you brought that up. So in talking about Ragchew here, one of the things that I think we should let the viewers know is we're generally not a political
No,
production here.
no, no.
Um,
Only if it
to be
happens organically, like it just did. I'm not going to force feed anything like that whatsoever. And if I ever get too political, even doing that, by all means, you could tell me to, hey, knock it off. But that's about as political
well,
as I get. Is just a passing mention of it.
no, no, no. But I think, just for the sake of the viewers, not knowing what their, our interests, our hobbies, our agendas and goals for Ragchew, um, I think, saying something simple like we We recognize that there's a lot of diversity of opinion in this world, and it's not our
Absolutely.
place to judge
No,
what your
no,
personal beliefs are. We welcome you here as viewers with open arms. We love you
absolutely.
for who you are.
No, for real.
And
Yeah, absolutely. Agreed 100%.
and we don't want you to feel like that there's going to be any conversation here where we're going to come down and put lines in the sand to say, a true viewer would vote that. No, you're not going to
Yeah,
get any of
no,
that from
nope.
us.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. If you're conservative, great. If you're not a conservative, if you're a quote leftist or whatever you are is what you are. The only time I'm going to mention it is if it organically comes up, and I was only
Yeah.
mentioning it in a sense of, well, I do watch the 700 Club. I like the program. That's just, it's
And
calm. The
and to
host
be
is very
honest,
calm.
like I find myself on YouTube and I scroll through a variety and watch a variety of different opinions and views. I think it would be wholly arrogant to say my views are right, and if you don't agree with it, you can shove off.
Yeah,
Um, so I challenge myself to listen to other people's perspectives and to try to learn from their experience, because somewhere between our differing perspectives is the truth.
yeah,
And it would be foolish in seeking the truth to ignore what other people have to say, because it does help to define the path towards discovering that ultimate truth. And to that end, I'm excited, George. I don't know if you want to tell the news. You told it on Wake and Bake earlier, but
I did.
let's
I
start
did.
talking about the 5 year plan, because quite honestly, I'm excited for you and I know you're going to do great things.
Well, I
But
appreciate that.
I know that it's going to be a trial, and I want to let you know as your friend that you have my support every step of the way.
And I appreciate that. So, okay. So I'm going to, to tell this story, I got to kind of back up a little bit. So I have a full blown panic disorder. Okay. It's severe panic attacks and it's full blown agoraphobia, which basically, in layman's terms, I mean, there's nuances to it, but to keep it as simple as possible for the sake of the story, anything outside the house is extremely difficult, whether that means just going and bringing the garbage out by myself or walking down the corner by myself. I wasn't always like this. I had ankle surgery back in 2016, two ankle surgeries back to back. There's titanium in there now. And the doctor essentially says that because of that being laid up for so long, that it kind of caused cabin fever. And then the cabin fever turned into full blown agoraphobia. So, with that being said, during that time when I got sick, I had always grown up in the church. I wasn't, I was a believer, but certainly not the way I am now. I believed, but I was more of a passive believer. I would go to church and everything like that, but that would be it. I would pray at night, but not wholeheartedly like I do now. So when all this happened, it was very easy, and as I say to people in my church now, too easy for me to completely give up on my faith and say, God, if you're there, why did you let this happen to me? Why did you let me have this panic disorder? Why? I thought I was a good person, which I am. I'm confident in myself enough that I know I'm a good person in the general sense of the term, but I wasn't a follower. I wasn't that type of good person. Um, so when everything happened and I kind of turned my back on it, I was looking for any other answer. I even got deep into Buddhism for a while, meditation, which are all fine for anybody. I mean, you want to go off on your own journeys for that. I highly recommend a spiritual journey, because what I found out there was, when I was doing the Buddhist class and everything like that, they kept drilling it into me. Oh, there is no creator God. There is no creator God. And as angry at God as I wasn't ready to close that door definitively and say, no, I don't believe in him. I was just angry. So that experience brought me full circle. And all of a sudden, there was one day I'm scrolling through and I see on Instagram, it was Mark Wahlberg who was doing the advertisements at the time. He was advertising an app called Hallow, which is a prayer app. And I just kept seeing it. At first, I was super cynical because, again, I was in that mind of, well, God, if you're there, why'd you let this happen to me? So I was still very cynical. So I kept seeing it, and I was even leaving a couple of nasty comments, like not cursing out Mark Wahlberg or anything like that, but I was leaving very cynical comments, like, "Oh yeah, when I pray, I make sure to post on Instagram about it." Of course, now when I go to church, I do post on Facebook about it. So, whoops.
Well,
but but one day I see the ad again, and as I'm scrolling, and I was just about to scroll up, I heard a little voice in the back of my head that I swear to you was not my own. That just said, try it. Like, what? Try it? And I listened to that little voice. I said, all right, whatever. I'll do the free trial. Did the free trial. That same day, one of the people through the Hallow app is Jonathan Rumi, who plays Jesus on the show The Chosen. So that same day I discovered the app, I discovered the show. I prayed through the app and then I watched the show, and it put the stories in such a way and showed the characters, the biblical characters in such a way that for the first time in my life, I truly felt touched by it. Like I was understanding it for the first time. So next thing I knew, that led me to, okay, well, now I'm opening up to it again. And I started praying, like I said, on the app and by myself immediately that day. That led me to more Jonathan Rumi. He was in a movie called Jesus Revolution, which is based on a true story, which I highly recommend that movie. I'm going to try to keep this as short as possible. I know there's a lot of different tangents to this story, but it's the setup to get me to my main point here. That movie made me search for the real pastors involved, and the only one still alive was a guy by the name of Pastor Greg Laurie, who runs Harvest Church out in California. So I start watching his stuff online, really resonating with it, wishing that I had a local church like that in my area. At this exact same time, my daughter Ruby was invited by a friend of hers to go to a local church called Vertical Church. She went there for one of the youth night things, and when she came home, I'll never forget it for the rest of my life. She said, Papa, I love that nickname. That never gets old to me. She goes, Papa, I can't explain it to you other than when they were playing the worship music, I just started crying and I want to go again. And that was all I needed to hear. So like any good dad, I jumped online and I searched for Vertical Church, started looking at the sermons and stuff. I was like, oh, okay, this is very similar to what I just saw, with Pastor Greg Laurie and his Harvest Church. I was like, oh, this is like the exact same thing, but local to me. Love the pastors, love the message. Next thing I knew, I found a friend of mine that was a member there that I went to high school with. We met up and we went to church, seeing each other for the first time in 20 years since high school. We went to church together. Next thing I knew, man, I was plugged into that community so fast. They were praying over my anxiety because I had a major panic attack there that day. Everybody was just so amazing. I immediately said, this is what I want. I want more of this. So that whole story gets me to where I'm at now, where now it's been like 3 months in this church. And now I'm serving in the church. We're doing serve day tomorrow. We're supposed to be going out and going into the community to help people with various things, weather permitting. We're here, there's bad weather now, so it might be rescheduled. But as of right now, we're going out and doing serve day. But my 5-year plan to bring the story finally to a close is I want to be a pastor there. I want to take my mental health woes and my faith, put them together, and it would make every single thing I ever went through throughout this whole process worth it. It would make every visit to the hospital worth it. Because in that first year and a half, I was in the hospital 22 times. Because I kept thinking I was dying. You couldn't convince me otherwise. I kept thinking I was dying. You could not convince me otherwise. And that's a scary experience to keep thinking you're dying that much,
Yeah.
So
But
I found my faith. I found my church. I found my community. I found my core group of people that are really helping me through all of this. And I just feel so renewed when I go there that I want to give back. I'm not cured by any stretch, but I'm getting a little bit better every day. And I want to use all that to help somebody else. If I can take my story and help just one person, it'll all be worth it. And that's where I'm at right now. My 5-year plan is to be a pastor at Vertical Church.
And it's funny because like I was thinking about this, and when you put it out there saying in 5 years, this is where I want to be. I'm in a flux here, but to add to your story, George and I finally got to meet for the first time a couple weeks ago. And it was a beautiful coincidence of fate that the day that I was coming to visit him, Vertical Church was having a Take Your Friend to Church Day.
Yeah.
And so George, being who he is, I reached out to him. I was like, dude, I'm going to be here. So what time are we going? Now I'm not a churchgoer by any stretch. My spirituality has really resonated more with I have faith, but I don't believe in religion per se. And I don't mean this as any sort of disrespect to you, George, because
Oh,
I
not at
know.
all. Not at all. Because by the book, I'm a born again Christian because we were baptized and everything there. However, I'm a follower of Jesus and I'm a follower of Jesus's word. That's what it is. It's less religion and more I just walk with Jesus now. That's how
And
I say it to people.
and the way I look at it, right, is that to live a fulfilling life, like, and I was telling this with the pastor of Vertical Church, Ken Vance, I think is his name.
Yep, yep, that's the head pastor, Pastor Ken.
He gave a beautiful sermon that day, and it was really like, if I could summarize it, it would be the prodigal son,
Yeah,
about
yeah.
coming back into the community, coming back into your faith. And that really resonated with me because I had things growing up where I grew up and I started to question my faith, question God, question what he has planned for me, you know. And when I was talking with Pastor Ken after the sermon, I was saying, for the longest time, I've lived by a phrase from a movie, Star Trek First Contact. Uh, don't try to be a great man. Just be a man and let history come to its own conclusions. And solid, don't get me wrong. I believe that's a solid phrase. Like whatever writer came up with that needs a pat on the back,
Yeah, for
because I
sure.
think some people try to inflate their self-importance rather than working in such a way where people come to the conclusion that you are important. Um, but when I was talking with Pastor Ken, I was saying, I've had some victories, I've had some failures, but in my victories, it was never like I made it. Like, woohoo, I got the job, or woohoo, what have you. Like I'm doing well in life. Um, but it was hollow. And there was no like, it's like I did the thing, I did it on my own, and I did it without Jesus. And while it was a victory in some regards, for my spirituality, it wasn't a victory. My victory had no one to share it with.
Yeah.
So, um, as George goes through here on his journey towards being a pastor, one thing I'm doing is I'm in his back corner. Um, I'm like Rocky's coach, and I'm making sure that George stays in the ring. Um, but in a way, like, I would say my 5-year plan really is to explore my own spirituality and to do it justice. I don't know where it's going to take me, but I do know that I don't like hollow victories. And I have small things here where, like, I'm excited that I'm going to go see my wife next week.
Yeah.
I'm excited that I'm going to be immigrating over to be with her permanently. Like, there's a lot of good things that are going on. And there, the only simple thing I can think is, it's a simple phrase, is in all things give thanks. And in all my victories, I never felt like I had anyone to thank. So it's just like, congratulations, you made it. You're still alone.
Mm. Well, if I can say one thing, I don't know where this is coming from. This is not my intention at all, but I truly feel a calling right now. You're coming back to the States in September, correct?
Yes, sir. At this point, that's the plan.
Okay, it'll still be fairly warm in September, at least around here. If you
Hmm.
decide, no pressure, even though we're on screen, sincerely, no pressure. If you do
Hmm.
decide to take that faith in that faith jump in your journey, I have the full authority, even though I'm not a pastor. I mean, if you read the Bible, anybody that's a believer that has been born again has this authority. We can go right down the beach, down the street to my house, and I can baptize you personally.
Dude, I think that would be a beautiful denouement to our friendship, in such that, like, we came together as two separate Kevin Smith fans, and we've entered a brotherhood of Christ together. I mean, you just, as long as you don't end up with your head on a dish like John the Baptist, I'm good.
You know what though, and it's funny because I have felt judgment already. There's one person that I went to high school with who will remain nameless because it has nothing. I don't need to put the person under the bus by any stretch, but there's somebody that if you look on my posts, there's somebody that always, anytime it's a religious post, they laugh react to it every single time. And I'm like, well, whatever. You want to believe your own thing, that's fine. You don't see me going onto your post and doing that stuff. It's just, they try to rile you up, and it's just not going to work because I'm firm with where I am. You know,
And
I am, I have so many different stories that I could share, but I liken myself um to Simon from the Bible, who was named, his first name was Simon, but then Jesus named him Peter after that, because Simon translated to oh gosh, I can't remember the exact wording of the translation to Simon, but it was something along the lines of like uneven footing or something like that. And then Peter means rock. So Jesus took him from somebody that was on unlevel footing to a rock. And that's how I see myself. Like, you're not going to falter me again. I'm back, and I'm back in a way that I never imagined my faith to be. And if I could share that with other people, if I could share that with you and baptize you, or even just preaching how it's helped my life to people, why wouldn't I share that? Why wouldn't I share the good? Like, I certainly don't intend for this show to ever become like the religious hour by any stretch, but when good things come to you through your faith in Jesus, how do you not shout that from the rooftop?
see, that's just it. Like everybody is so busy trying to chase clout, trying to chase money, trying to chase everything else. They let the distractions get in the way of their spirituality and their spiritual journey, no matter what you believe in spiritually,
Yeah.
that you just let the simple things become something that overtakes you. And before you know it, you're overwhelmed with nonsense. Like, um, by trade, I'm a software developer, right? So, like, my big contribution to the working economy is I can write computer programs. But lately, the last few months, I've been having some really, really bizarre medical issues that's been interfering, um, to the point where I resigned my last job. Um, and I'm taking this time here to take away and reevaluate everything. So, like, I think this is a beautiful first step in our first episode because we're getting each other at a crossroads, both of us, for
Yeah.
two distinctly different reasons. The one thing that brought us together, and I'll say this because people are bound to ask, like, hey, how'd you guys meet each other? And I wish I could
It's
say
a
it was
great
something
story.
I wish I could say it was something like really, really, really like off the walls. But really, it was an act of kindness.
Yeah, it
Um,
was. It was.
so George and I are both members of that Kevin Smith Club. And to the cafeteers out there, if you're listening, hello, welcome to the show. Glad you could join us. Um, and I was fairly new to the Discord and the fan club at that point. I was still trying to get my footing for like, all right, this is acceptable. Like, this is, like the type of getting a feel and sussing out the room, if you will. Um, so one day you put the word out there that the Silent Bob overcoat bathrobe was on sale at FYE. And it was something I think like 30% off. Um,
If
and
not
you made it,
more, honestly, I remember it being really cheap. I don't remember how cheap, but I feel like it was even more off than that.
I'll have to
But
look up
regardless, I
that.
mean, that's not the important part of the story, though. Sorry.
No, so so you put the word out there, something to the effect of like, I'm not in a position where I could get this, but someone out there may be able to, and I want to spread the word. And you know, at this point in my life, I had a steady job. I was making the money that I felt like I could live off of. Um, I attribute the inspiration. I'm not going to attribute the sobriety. I'm going to attribute the inspiration to go sober. I'm going to give that to Kevin Smith, Jason Mewes, and Andrew McMahon. Um, but in the process here, right, of going sober, I found myself, hey, I was able to hold a steady job while I drank. That wasn't a problem. But now I found myself flush with money when I stopped drinking. So I definitely took a page out of the YOLO book. Uh, and I started living it up. So I went in that Kevin Smith club that year. Um, I came in mid membership year, so it wasn't like I was able to go into any of the higher tier members. But I joined up as a fashionable male, and I, in part, was to share the word of, hey, the Jane Silent Bob Gets Old podcast found me at the right place at the right time with my head in a toilet vomiting and said you could do better. So I, I wasn't having any fun drinking at that point. I was putting down close to 750 milliliters of bourbon a day. It was bad.
Yeah.
And I've since taken all that money I would have spent on drinking and have spent it on experiences. So the first thing I did was a couple years ago, Kevin Smith, Jason Mewes, Brian O'Halloran, Jeff Anderson, Trevor Furman, Marilyn Gigoletti, they were all at GalaxyCon in Columbus. And I told my parents, I was like, hey, listen, I got to celebrate this. Like, I'm here now on level ground with a better mindset. And I want to celebrate with them. So I'll pull the picture up and I'll edit it in post.
Yeah.
But I have a picture of the poster I got, Clerks 2, signed by everybody. And it was funny because I was joking with my parents ahead of time that I was like, I'm gonna get Brian to make an ass to mouth reference. And my parents were like, don't do that. It's already got one F word on there because I got the guy that was all right, kids. It's gonna get a little rated R here for just a second.
I already know who you're talking about. I already know exactly who you're talking about.
The caretaker of Kelly. How about that? Kelly's caretaker.
Yes, go watch Clerks 2 and you'll know exactly who we're talking about.
So he was there and I got him to autograph the poster, but he wasn't on it. He's just like, where the F am I? No spoilers here, but
expletive deleted a donkey.
Yes, exactly those words. So like after that, like I went up to get Brian's autograph. He wrote, "You never go ass to mouth," and I didn't even prompt him for that. So it's just like, you know what, my there's certainly more embarrassing things that my mom could be ashamed of me. This is like this is on brand for this group of people. I am not going to sully it up and say, don't do that. That's my sobriety poster. No,
Yeah, right.
I'm here to celebrate. And sometimes humor's rated R. Just look at Beverly Hills Cop.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But to take the story back to where it was in the first place, so I, on my end of it, after I posted about this bathrobe being on sale, I get a random DM from a guy I never met in my life saying, hey, what's your address? I bet you look good in a bathrobe. Like, not how he said it, but that's how it is in my head. But no, he did. He asked for my address. He's like, hey, man, I could totally send you one, And I appreciated that so much. And that's where the friendship bloomed from. We kept in touch after that. I think both of us, I don't mean to speak for you, but I think both of us thought that it would have been a one and done thing, just an act of kindness and move on. But a real friendship bloomed out of that. And now it's a creative partnership.
And it's beautiful too, because like we have this story to tell, right? And it's not your typical like, hey, yeah, no, we were at somebody's party and we got introduced. No, we were complete strangers. And I said, I'm going to buy this complete stranger who I don't know a bathrobe.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, speaking of though, entertainment news, I got some news for you.
Yeah.
Guess who I talked to today?
Who'd you talk to today? I already know. I'm going to pretend like I don't know.
Yes, I know. I gave you the heads up here.
You did. I'm excited to hear this story.
Yeah, it was a very brief interaction, but I talked with Michael Rosenbaum from Smallville.
Amazing. One of my absolute, in the super, super duper rare event that he ever sees this. One of my absolute favorite Lex Luthors of all time. And I truly mean that from the bottom of my heart. That dude was my Lex Luthor, period.
Honestly, I think he's everybody's Lex Luthor. Like WD did a terrific job with casting on Smallville. Straight up. Like my biggest remorse is that they haven't turned around and said, all right, we have everybody that we've worked with. We know their repertoire. Let's bring them back and shoot a full feature.
I think the only caveat to that would be Tom Welling. I don't think he has any interest in that. I can't speak for the guy, but by every account I've ever heard, it was really kind of him being the holdout. He doesn't want to suit up.
Well, and you know what, to be fair, I mean, you don't want to get pigeonholed into a role, right? So you don't want him to be like, oh yeah, that's America's Clark Kent, and that's all he's known for. He's done a diversity of roles. Like he's done, what is it? Cheaper by the Dozen, the remake. He was
Yeah,
in
yeah, but
that.
even that was a long time ago. Like, not I don't want to sound like that guy. Like, what have you done for me lately, Clark? you know,
Yeah.
but like, no, really though. Like, has he done any real projects lately? The last thing I remember seeing him in was when, gosh, what was it? Uh, oh well, no, it was all the CW shows. It wasn't just the Flash. It was all of them when they did their little Crisis on Infinite Earth storyline, and he did come back as Clark for like a quick scene.
Yeah.
And that was the last thing I saw him in. I mean, I know he's been doing the convention circuit with Rosenbaum, and he's been on Rosenbaum's podcast quite a bit. Oh,
Oh
and they
yeah.
had their own podcast together. They had their own, speaking of rewatch podcasts, bringing it back to what I had
Yep.
originally said, how everybody wants to do that now. They have their own Smallville rewatch podcast.
So I'm a Patreon of Michael Rosenbaum's podcast for Inside of You. And so going to the message here, he sent out a blanket message to everybody saying like thank you. And I responded back here. I'll pull it up and share with you what I said. Because it wasn't much, but it's one of those things like it's cool that when you have those direct interactions. Uh he said, just wanted to say thanks for supporting me in this podcast, guys. You're the reason this podcast keeps going. Couldn't do it without you. Love to all, Rosie. So I messaged him back saying, Rosie, you truly are a gem of a soul. It's a true pleasure to be able to support you and Inside of You. I'm greatly excited to introduce Inside of You to my wife when I travel to Wales next week. Bonus, I'll be repping Sunspin
There you
as I
go.
navigate
There you go.
Heathrow. Here's to you and your continued success. Much love, Mike. And he responded back, love you, Mikey.
That's
So,
awesome. That's awesome.
so I mean, I live a very bizarre life, right? He's one of the few celebrities that I got to meet at a convention that I didn't give chocolate covered pretzels to. And it was not out of any sort of like malice or anything. The plan was originally GalaxyCon was the one weekend. Then the following weekend, Rosenbaum, Kristen Krug, and Welling were going to be at Steel City Con in Pittsburgh. So I was going to see them again the next week.
Gotcha.
But I got COVID in that week. Like, I think I got COVID at the convention. And
That's
then,
honestly likely. That's honestly very likely.
and then, yeah, 2, 3 days later, they rushed my mom to the hospital because she had COVID too. And she has multiple sclerosis. So for her, she started overheating. And whenever she overheats, her body just goes into paralysis.
Oh, that's terrible.
So like she was like there's couch lock and then there's not being able to get out of the couch because you're
Right.
stuck.
Right.
Um so she spent a few days in the hospital and she's been recovering, but I mean, I don't want to say she had long COVID by any stretch. I'm not a doctor, but yeah, the impact on her physical ability took a hit greatly because she was out for a couple of days. Just one of those like if you don't use it, you lose it. And
Yeah,
she was confined to a bed. Um,
that'll do it.
but also, speaking of entertainment here, and maybe this is something like we're not doing a rewatch, but I reached out recently on your behalf to Sean Patrick Flannery from Boondock Saints.
Mhm.
And I'll tell this story because honestly, Sean is a wonderful soul. I, as I mentioned before, I do a thing at conventions where, at least in Pittsburgh, I'll get a local chocolatier. They make these chocolate covered pretzels, and they're fantastic. And so my shtick is I'll buy several boxes of these, right? And they're not cheap. They're like $13 a box.
Oh wow. I didn't realize they were that much. Every time you told me the story, you never added the price.
Well, I mean, it's one of those things like, what can I do as a fan? Like, yeah, I can give you my money, but there's what's something small like welcome to Pittsburgh. Here's something for Pittsburgh. Hope you enjoy it, type of thing. Um, Now, my all-time favorite reaction by proxy by what happened is with Sean Patrick Flannery. So I gifted him a box of chocolate covered pretzels, right? And this was on a Friday or Saturday. This was at the beginning of the convention. Um, the following day, he sees me in the crowd and he's like, you got me in trouble. And I'm like, what? What did I do? And he's like, so I was video chatting with my kids last night. And they're like, what are you eating? And he's like, chocolate covered pretzels. I want some. And so I did a quick Google and I just told him, hey, while you're at Pittsburgh International, they do have a Sarah stand there. So if you need to, in a pinch, get something for the kids, that's the place to do it. And so um, at the time, I was talking with him about Brazilian Jiu Jitsu because I was about to pursue it. And he recommended me two movies. The first movie he recommended me was called Born a Champion. And it's a fictitious storyline, but it's about a mixed martial artist. And he gets out of the art, but comes back to it. Very much like Prodigal Son in a fashion. But uh, the other movie he did, and the one I'm going to recommend you watch, is called Nefarious.
Yeah, I
Uh,
remember you mentioning that the other day.
uh, Terrific movie. And the reason why I reached out to him, because with what you were going through the other day, I wasn't sure who I could reach out to be like, how do you how do you balance your faith with the arts? Because not all horror is like there's horror and then there's like guts raw like you, you're just going for the visual effects for the sake of trying to get the reaction.
Right. Right. Like
But
as much as I love the movie, the Terrifier 1 and 2, and the third one is coming out soon. I can't wait for that. Those are just straight up gore fests. And they admittedly say that. Like they are straight up there for the shock value gore. And that's all fine and good. But that's not, to bring it full circle. The thing you were just alluding to is that, besides my 5-year plan of, being the pastor in the church I'm taking very, very seriously, we also have our creative endeavors too. And we're going to be doing a film together for the first time. And it's a horror short film called The Bag that I wrote 2 years ago. So it's a bit of a balancing act between balancing the faith and balancing the creative aspirations.
and one thing that he said succinctly, and I thought it was beautiful, was, without evil or without good, there is no evil. And we showed that balance in Nefarious. And short and sweet. Like, I mean, for the fact that I reached out to him on a whim and he took the time to answer, I'm blessed. Uh, I mean, but to my story originally, when he mentioned watching Nefarious and Born a Champion, he said when he finished Born a Champion, message me on Facebook. And so I did. I wasn't expecting a response. I was expecting it to be more of an automated setup, like most uh, talent has for their Facebook pages. Like if there's a messaging option, it's a chat bot.
Right.
But no, when I messaged him to thank him for his time and everything, he sent me back a picture from the chocolate shop at the airport
That's
saying,
so cool.
I
That's
got
so
the
cool.
pretzels. So, I mean, I'm just anytime that Sean comes to town, I'm going to make time and go to the convention to see him. I mean,
Yeah.
he straight up does the fan service, but he's a good soul. Um, Now, at that same convention, Michael Rooker was also present. He was the inspiration for the entire act in the first place. And so,
Yes.
for our Kevin Smith fans out there, I'm sure that they would recognize Michael Rooker as Mr. Spenning from Mallrats. And one of the things that happens is Jason's lead character does something, let's just call it rude for the sake of simplicity, something rude with a chocolate covered pretzel.
He stink palms them. You can call it what it is. It's a
Yeah.
stink palm.
Oh yeah, I can say it. He stink palmed them. So when I went to see Michael Rooker, I had this package of Sarah's chocolate covered pretzels. And so I was like, you know, I couldn't, I could not do this. But I wanted to give you some chocolate covered pretzels. And he just ripped it right open, pulled the package out, ate a pretzel. He's just like, they're good, not as sticky as I like them. And so, bless him, he brings the chocolate covered pretzels with him to the photo op, and he brings it purposefully for my dad and I. So the
That's
picture
cool.
of my dad and I with Michael Rooker, we're all holding a chocolate covered pretzel like that.
That's so
Um,
cool. That's so cool.
and so um, yeah, I mean, other people that I've gifted chocolate covered pretzels to include Edward James Olmos. And originally I wasn't planning on giving him one. What happened though was the day before I went up because first off, I'm a Battlestar Galactica fan. So, I mean, Captain Adama was my hero. Um, and so I went and got two autographs, one for that, and I got one for my mom because another role that he did, and I'm going to make sure because every time I look this up, I get two movies confused. One is a Spike Jones movie and is not the movie he was in. And then there's this one. So let me pull it up here. Um, it's a beautiful film. If you've Stand and Deliver, that's it. He played
Okay.
a math teacher named Jamie Escalante. And my mother being a math teacher, I wanted to get something for my mom to that celebrated Jamie Escalante's life. And bless him, um, he took the time to write out this very long message. Beautiful, like, and the penmanship was immaculate. And so afterward, I told my dad, I was like, listen, we're coming back again tomorrow, and I'm giving him some chocolate covered pretzels because that was above and beyond. Um, Other people, though, Kurt Angle caused him to go off keto for a day.
Which I think is amazing.
Well, the best part is, right? So me being in Pittsburgh, he's a hometown boy.
Yeah.
He went to a neighboring school district. So when he came home with the gold medal in, was it 96 Atlanta? Was that the
He
Olympics?
trying to do the math. Yeah, no, that makes sense because then he was in WWE by 99, 2000. So yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah. Um, to do it with a broken neck too, like he earned that gold medal, period.
Yeah. Oh,
Um,
absolutely. Absolutely.
but it was funny. I went up to him. I was like, I wanted to give you some hometown cooking. And he's like, oh man, I love these. So um yeah, I swear by these chocolate covered pretzels. And that's like it's evolved here to where well, a couple weeks ago when I came up to see you.
Yeah.
Not to see. So when I originally flew over, the plan was I was doing the Golden Calves dinner for that Kevin Smith Club. So for those of you who aren't in that Kevin Smith Club, there's different membership tiers. One of the membership tiers is a Golden Calf. And the ultimate perk for that membership level is that once a year, there's an opportunity to have dinner with Kevin Smith. So as it turned out, this dinner was on the 29th and your take your friend to church day was on the 30th. So it's just like, yeah, this is easy. I do the event, do spend time with Kevin Smith, and then next morning get on a train and head up to see you.
Yeah.
And I didn't think twice about it. And looking back, I mean, the original travel plan was I was only going to be there for a few hours and then I was going to bail home. But I don't know if it was just sheer exhaustion from the multiple days of doing the 3:30 wake up call to everything else. And before 3:30, 2 days before, because I had a 5 o'clock flight out of Pittsburgh, 5 in the morning, I should say,
Yeah.
not five normal people time, 5 a.m.
Right.
Um, but it was the cheapest flight out of Pittsburgh. And at the now Pittsburgh International has been suffering from some growing pains because it's not a major originating city, but summer brings in that traffic. And they're in the middle of refurbishing the terminal, so it's under construction. So um, there's horror stories of people that they're saying if you don't arrive at 1:32 in the morning for a 5 a.m. flight, you're missing your flight.
That's
And
crazy. That's crazy.
and thank goodness I had some foresight. Like I was still working at the time, so it's just like, yeah, I'll splurge, get the first class ticket. One of the things that came with though, it was the priority security screening and the priority baggage checking. So I didn't have to deal with those extraordinarily long lines where people were waiting 2.5, 3 hours just to get through security.
Right.
It was maybe 5 minutes from shoes off to shoes on. And not to make it sound like I'm a snob, like I fly first class.
Oh,
No, for me, it was a matter of this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. And after considering the check bags and everything else, it came to be a wash. So it's like, all right, might as well. And I got the first class ticket. Um, Now, when I got to Charlotte, um, I went and bought a day pass for Americans Lounge because my original intent was I was going to chill in the lounge in Newark while I wait for another Golden Cab to arrive, and we were going to make our way towards Red Bank. But I had to pick up my check bag, so I had to go through the secure area, and they won't let you back in without a ticket. So ended up taking the L on the air club in the airport lounge there in Newark. But the original intent was all right, gonna do some sightseeing in Jersey and then visit with you. And it was exciting because we hadn't met each other at this point. Like
right.
it, um to the point where yeah, I joked around saying, Bonnie's probably gonna have to poke me to make sure I'm real.
Bonnie being my wife, for those that don't know.
So yeah, it's beautiful. Like you have a wonderful family, George, and nobody can ever take that away from you. And you're
Yeah,
a
no, I'm
loving father.
very, very blessed. Very, very blessed about all that. Man, I have a great
And
family, great support
and
system.
and on top of that, it feels like it's a humbling honor to be included as part of your extended family.
Absolutely.
Um, it was, I mean, here we go. To July 30th or June 30th. It's 4 in the morning. I'm making my way to a New Jersey transit station. And my objective was, all right, I need to make it to Newark Liberty's Amtrak station for 6:30 so that way I can get on the Amtrak to Stamford. And I was like, I thought I was going to rest on the train, to be honest. Like, I thought I was going to be able to get some shut eye and try to recoup a bit. But I was just too excited. I was just like, first off, what am I going to say? Like, hi.
Yeah.
um, but I mean, it was a long time coming, and I was telling Lizzie about this too. It's just like, Lizzie being my wife, that it really is beautiful how things have come together. Like there's so many things that we have in common, and even though we come from different paths and walks of life, uh, we find this creative energy. Like I picked up the equipment here. I mean, to tell the viewers, I picked up a lot of the recording equipment with the anticipation of recording with you over a year ago.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
just work on my end was such a impediment to doing anything. Like asking me to go and do like I didn't even go to Walmart. I did a delivery because of how busy work kept me. And I think there's a certain line you got to draw in the sand to say, all right, no, seriously, I'm not going to buy underwear off of it, Walmart delivery. I'm going to go pick it up.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it just the hustle and bustle got to be a lot. And so, like, in reflecting on the 5 year plan, a lot of it is going to come down to exploring myself creatively through podcasting and everything else. Um, One of the things here that I haven't done yet, um, and it's something I'm going to do once I get to Wales next week, is I'm going to be helping Lizzie get herself set up for doing podcasting. So, um, she wants to do a mental health podcast, and I'm greatly encouraging her because if you want to talk about something these days, like the barrier of entry to do content creation is not that big per se. It's
Oh,
just about looking for that happy medium of, all right, well, what do we want to do? And that abstract thought, I mean, that's what I love about Ragchew is that it's a blank canvas. It's brand
Yeah.
new. It could
Yeah.
be anything we want it to be. And if it comes down to be that we evolve to the point where um, it really is discussing your ministry and talking about the moves you're making on that end, that would be a beautiful thing. I think just to discuss with the community at large. I mean, this is this is maybe Ragchew may be between you and I right now, but who knows? We may have an audience interaction. We don't know
Yeah.
what, I mean, it really comes down to what people want to see in that regard in terms of the calls to action and the such. But we're not going to be blaring um, or bombarding everyone in this video with, if you like what you're watching, please like, subscribe, ring that notification bell so you don't miss anything important. Like, no, you're not going to get that from us. We want you to be
No, I
happy.
mean, by
And
all means, though, by all means, do that.
oh yes,
Do
yes.
do that. We just won't be telling you to do that, but by all means, please do that.
I think the greatest compliment that anyone can do is to spread word of mouth, really. Especially with it being a green podcast, um, finding the audience. I mean, that's going to be part of our journey and talking about
Yeah,
how we do things like starting
yeah.
a Discord
I mean,
community and
we're gonna be all
such.
over the place. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, because this show is gonna be
And
all over the place. I mean, we went from Eminem to Marilyn Manson to unfortunately school shootings to faith to sobriety to chocolate covered pretzels and celebrities. Like we've been all over the place. But I
and
love every second of it because it doesn't, it's not boring at all. And it truly is Ragchew.
yeah, it really is a rap show, like in the sincerest term and phrase. One sec, I feel like I'm gonna sneeze.
And
Darn
it went
it.
away.
It
And it
went
went
away.
away.
It went away. Yeah, I felt it in my eyes, just like, come on.
I
Um,
hate that. I hate that.
um, but no, I mean, the beautiful thing is that um, we're taking everybody on this journey with us. So we have a bunch of different things planned. We're not going to give away all of our plans here, but
No.
there's a lot of exciting things to look forward to. Not just out of Ragchew, but out of Anxious Dude production at large. Um, and it's nice to get a break from being a software developer. I guess I should introduce myself. I'm Mike Finnegan, producer of Anxious Dude Productions.
Yes. And I'm George McGaffin, and I'm the writer and director of a lot of different things you'll see on Anxious 2 Productions. I did do a short film a while ago called The Walk that was all about living with agoraphobia and panic attacks, like I mentioned towards the top of the show. And we're working on the horror short. We got The Bag coming soon, coming in 2025. And just tons of really great stuff, man. I'm super excited to dive into all of this with you and to show the journey, besides just the creative end of it, really show the journey of my walk with Jesus to become a pastor. Like maybe that'll sound corny to some people, but that's my life. That's where my life is heading. And I want to also show people that if you're a true follower of Jesus and you still do the things you're supposed to do with that you can still have this creative life. Because a lot of times people get a bad rap with Christianity, like, oh well, now all the fun's got to stop. No, all the sinful fun has to stop, but you could still have fun. You could still be creative. You could still be yourself. You know
And
what I
it's,
mean?
yeah, it's beautiful. And I mean, like, so the intent here, you're going to be seeing this later on YouTube. So congratulations, YouTube. Welcome to the first episode of Ragchew with us. Um,
Yay!
but with YouTube, there's some things that come along for content moderation that we've got to be respectful of.
Mhm.
Um, and so this isn't going to be like a rated R podcast. We may get into some very sensitive or dark topics at times, such as the school shootings.
Right.
But
But I don't think
our
either of us
aim is
cursed. I don't think either of us cursed this whole time.
no, and I've been trying to do a really good job at watching that too, because quite honestly, like we could be vulgar. It's easy. It's
Yeah.
easy to drop expletives. But I really think that like you remove the meaning and the purpose when you just use it all the time. So like if I'm sitting there and I drop something and it hits my toe, um, before I would just blurt out whatever expletive came to my head.
Yeah.
Now I take a genuine effort to bite my tongue, and it's not like out of anything like, oh, I'm a bad person if I swear. No, no, it's a matter of I. There's a time and place for everything, and I think that the best illustration of using vulgarity with class is George Carlin's Seven Dirty Things You Can't Say on Television.
Yes, yes. What a classic bit. What a classic bit that is. Um, but yeah, you
So
know, to make one point though of something else that was in the back of my head before we start wrapping it up, because I feel like this is coming to a natural conclusion. If you
yeah,
do decide, going back to the point that I was making about potentially baptizing you right at the beach, which A would be an honor for me to do. But we should record it for the show.
I think it would be a beautiful addition to our repertoire here. If for nothing else, just having two guys willing to talk about their spirituality.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not an easy subject to bring up because everybody has got so divisive with their personal perspectives and views that, like, several years ago, I was on an airplane flight from Chicago to Rochester coming back from an interview with Microsoft. And I was talking with someone about God and faith. And I think they got the impression of, oh boy, here we go. And I said something almost right off the bat. I was like, now, I know my beliefs may not be everybody's cup of tea, but I do think that at a certain point of the human experience, religion was really the moral compass that guided one's scruples.
Yeah.
And so if you were to take the storytelling element out and just condense everything down to the lessons, whether it's the Quran, the Torah, the Bible, you're going to get guidelines on how to be a decent human being.
Yeah.
And really, and I explained it at the time, I was like, at the end of the day, it's one's personal moral choice on whether they choose to be spiritual or not. But spirituality in itself is not a bad thing. I think what people do in the name of spirituality and pervert it, that's the bad thing.
Yeah, yeah. If you go by just the word, and even more specifically, if you go by Jesus's word, because the whole idea of what Jesus was saying in the first place was he said, "This is the new covenant." He said, "You had the old covenant, you had the Old Testament. This is the new one. This is what you should be following." And so that's why I say I walk with Jesus. I don't necessarily have a denomination because my church, A, it's non-denominational. But B, it's I follow Jesus's word. If Jesus himself didn't say it, then as far as I'm concerned, it's interpreted by somebody else. Even if it's still in the Bible, and don't get me wrong, like there's a lot of good stuff in the Bible, but if it didn't come from Jesus directly, because he doubled down on the important stuff, he didn't just mention the important sins to him. He doubled down on them. And I'll give you one quick example. There's, yeah, I'm going to paraphrase it, but he said, "You might have heard that adultery is a sin. Well, I'm here to tell you that if you even look at a woman with lust in your eyes, you've committed adultery in your heart." So he took the original sin from the Old Testament, he doubled down on it, which is why, and some people within church communities might not agree with this, but this is why I and a lot of other people are still supporters of LGBTQ plus and all that stuff, because guess what? Yeah, maybe in the Old Testament it said being gay was a sin. And later in the New Testament, people try to say that because it's going back to the original Old Testament. But Jesus, not once, never once mentioned it. So if it was that
Well,
important, don't you think he would have doubled down on it?
and I think the New Testament does a brilliant job at illustrating just Jesus's outreach and his ministry during his lifetime.
Yeah,
Like if you look at the stories, it said like he dined with lepers, he dined with tax collectors, he
yeah,
dined with the undesirables.
yeah,
And at the end of the day, there's some people in society that view the LGBTQ community with disdain
yeah,
because they feel it goes against natural order. Not my place to dictate what natural order is. Love is love in my book.
yeah. Same here.
But
Same here.
when it comes at the end of the day, I don't think Jesus would have any sort of apprehension towards anyone that identified as being LGBTQ. I think he would open up his heart and say, I'm here for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And you know what? I think this is reaching a natural ending point, so I'm going to leave it with a little quote, if I may.
Go for it.
All right. Jesus doesn't call the qualified; he qualifies the called.
Well said. Well said. Well, with that said, it is starting to get late here. We still have to go into post and then review everything. But from the bottom of my heart, I want to thank everybody for joining us on this experience here today. Um, we're next time you're going to see me, I'm going to actually be on the road. So I'm doing a tour day UK here, George, as you're aware.
Yep.
Uh, so next time we do any sort of recording here, it's going to be from an or airline lounge in London Heathrow, which I'm excited. Like now, can't talk about a lot of things here. I mean, people see what they see it, but I made it a point to find an airline lounge. First off, that had good showers. Um, but secondly, I wanted an aesthetic there that would complement the show. And I think I found the perfect airline lounge for that. And that's in Cathay Pacific's lounge at London Heathrow's Terminal 3. And I showed you a picture, George. It
Yes, you
really
did.
does look like something out of Wayne
It
Enterprises.
really does. It really, really does. And I can't wait to actually see it. Not in person, but in person through you.
Well, yeah, I mean, so for everybody else here, I mean, they'll see the show as it's staged, with the camera and mic and everything. But I'll take you on a virtual tour. I'll call you up
Mhm.
beforehand, put you on the webcam, say, see, this is the noodle bar, this is the showers, this is the rest and relaxation area.
Can't wait.
And no, see, I can't wait for that, but more than anything, I really can't wait to see you again.
Yeah, absolutely. And it'll be meaningful too. Again, no pressure at all. I'm seriously no pressure. But if you do decide to go that route, man, that's gonna be something special.
Dude, I couldn't think of anyone that would be more qualified. I mean, it to be from a true like soul brother.
Yeah,
It would
yeah,
be a humbling honor.
yeah.
But all right, so let's wrap up the show here. I want to give out some quick thanks you. First off, I want to thank my beautiful wife Lizzie. She is not able to be with us here this evening as that time difference. But uh I also want to thank my mom, my dad, God. Want to thank you, George. Want to thank your beautiful family for hosting me while I was visiting you. Um, I want to thank everybody that's listening. I want to send a special thanks to those that are in that Kevin Smith Club, as well as Bullmates, where on every Monday and Friday on Bullmates, you can find George himself doing the Wake and Bakes, which, might I add, was a pleasure to co-host with you.
Oh, that was awesome when we did that one. And that was a great little dry run for what we did today. Yeah, I wasn't planning on doing any thank yous, but just, again, maybe it'll sound corny to some people, but just thank God for just another day, man, and everything that comes with the day. Because without him, I learned without him, I had nothing. Because for a long time, I had nothing. And now I got
Amen to
everything.
that. Amen to that. I mean, like I was saying earlier, like when I was talking with Pastor Ken, like I felt like any victory I had, while a victory was hollow. But all right, so next podcast, you'll find me traveling, and I'm going to be assuming UK time here for several months. So um, you're going to catch George and I as I travel about, and then when I return back to the States in September, the game plan is I'm going to try to find my way back up to you, so that way we can start shooting the bag.
Yes, yes, we got that going on. Oh man. Oh, then you know what? If we're doing that too, then baptize him before that, man. That'd be really cool. That'd be really cool. Doing
Well,
that and starting the movie at the same time.
I think that would be a good way to start it, is like,
Yeah.
just get everybody that is on staff and say, listen, you don't have to participate. This is something that's true exclusively between Mike and I. But
Yeah.
if you want to participate, we welcome you to.
Yeah. How cool would it be if other people were like, yeah, do me too? Like that would be really cool. I'm not betting on that happening, but that'd be really cool. That'd be really cool to see how many people we can get
Well,
giving their lives to Jesus. I mean, again, like I keep saying, oh, it sounds corny to some people, but that's just my anxiety talking. I'm talking from the heart here. And if it resonates with people, great. If it doesn't, that's them. This is just me.
yeah.
It's me being me.
And honestly, like I think moving forward, it would be a good thing to talk about. Like,
Yeah,
let's talk about our spirituality. Let's talk about our journey. Let's talk about what we're doing also creatively and professionally. And honestly, I think to summarize it best, really, this is just inviting people to listen in on our conversations.
yeah, yeah. There's no format to this. I mean, I think we said 15 minutes ago we were coming to a natural conclusion, and we're still here.
Well, that's just it. I can ramble. So, like,
Yes, you can.
I, I mean, I could sit here and I could talk about anything ad nauseum. But at some point here, yeah, we do got to wrap it up because people have to get on with their day.
Yeah.
We're going into an exciting weekend, I'm sure for some people. I know I am. I'm packing. Um,
Yeah,
and
and like I
as you can
said,
tell,
weather permitting, I'll be serving the community tomorrow, which is really really cool for me because of the anxiety and stuff. This will be my first time doing something like this, so that's quite literally what I had said in the very beginning, where I want to use my suffering to help others, and that's literally what I'm going to be doing tomorrow.
and the best part is that I get to see you break out of your shell here because I know how difficult it is for you to be outgoing in that end. And the fact that you're doing the outreach, like, first off, I couldn't be more proud of you. Um, it could have been anything. You could work in a soup kitchen, but the fact that you're putting yourself out there when you struggle with the social anxieties that you do, like, I, it's commendable, and you deserve to give yourself a pat on the back just for
Yeah,
taking that first step.
yeah. No pat on the back for me. Like I said, I stand by what I say, and it's all thanks to God. It's all thanks to finding my faith again. I take no credit for anything I'm doing.
Well, you're doing God's work. That's the real
I'm
key
trying.
thing.
I'm trying. Yes, absolutely.
And so, friends, if you ever find yourself in the West Haven area and you wish to join George, Vertical Church is, I forget what the address is, but they have two,
It's
three
on
mass
Malloy
times.
Road. It's on Malloy Road in West Haven.
I know George is, I'm not trying to dox you or anything,
No,
but
no, no.
I mean, uh, if you happen to go to Vertical Church and see George or myself if I'm visiting, feel free to come up, say hi. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm even putting the word out there now in the off chance that there's some random people traveling through Heathrow that happen to be a viewer. Like, yeah, if you're traveling through Heathrow next week and you happen to see me, say hi. Like, I don't expect that to happen on this trip, but I think it would
No,
be cool at some point if it
never
did
know.
happen.
Never know. Never know. Back when I was a pro wrestler, I was recognized at Walmart once by a kid that wanted a picture with me. That was a really cool experience.
Oh, see, that's kids. Ah, they're so innocent. And the
Yeah.
fact like their fandoms are so pure. Like,
Mhm.
I couldn't imagine that. That must have
Yeah,
been a
no,
real
it's a
like,
really such a cool feeling. And you know what? On a future episode, we'll talk more about me being a pro wrestler. But like we keep saying, we should really should wrap it up. So thank you all for tuning in, man. From the bottom of my heart, this has been a blast. This has been so much fun for me. It really, really has. I look forward to doing many, many, many more episodes of Ragchew and sharing my journey with you, Mike, and with whoever happens to be watching or listening. This is an exciting time in my life, and I'm glad I got people that can come along for the journey.
it's a pleasure to join you for the journey, first off. But secondly, I want to thank you for being a friend. Like, being a creative partner is awesome. Getting to finally do
Absolutely.
something creative is awesome. But
Yes.
we're friends first and foremost, and that doesn't change.
No,
So,
no.
I mean, even in the run up to this production, I had reservations because of the last few days on your end. Like, I didn't want to push you into
No,
doing a
no, but it's totally
podcast.
no, and it's totally fine. Things ended up working out, and like you said, likewise, man. Thank you for being a friend.
Oh, I mean, we can go with the Golden Girls here, or we can go with Fred Rogers. Won't you be my neighbor?
Yeah, yeah. And you know what, man? If the world had more Fred Rogers, the world would be a much better place. And guess what? Also a Christian.
Yup. My
It's
my
just
biggest
saying.
re
Just
my
saying.
biggest my biggest regret, right, was when after I got back to Pittsburgh after seeing you, I went on the hunt because for a while they had his sweater on display at the airport, and I
Oh,
wanted to get a picture for to send to you and to Bonnie.
that would have been great.
And they because of the construction, everything's all moved, so I don't know if it's going to come back or not. They One thing they did have that I sent a picture of was this giant T-Rex at the airport.
That's awesome.
But anyway, I'll keep rambling if I don't wrap this
Yeah,
up.
yeah.
So
Enough
so
chewing the rag.
All right. So from the bottom of my heart, everybody, I'm Mike Finnegan. Thank you for joining us on Ragchew today.
Yeah, my name's George McGaffin, and I also just thank you. Thank you guys so much for being here.
All right. Until next time, stay safe, stay classy, and don't do anything I wouldn't do.
What does that even mean?
Well, because I live a good life, it means don't be a jerk. That's all.
There you go. There you go. Be kind. Rewind.
Yes. Speaking of, rest in peace, Redbox. All right. So on that note, apologies to Redbox for making that joke.
Your audio again. It's really telling us to wrap it up now.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
This is an even better ending. This is great. We could just leave it as is.
oh, I intend to. All right. All right, everybody. Until next time, I'm Mike Finnegan, and I am thankful that you were able to join us today.
I'm George McGaffin, and you're not.
All right. Take care, everyone. And until next time, be good to yourself.
Yes.
Matt Damon and Ben Affleck during the Jane Silent Bob Strikes Back.
Lion face roar. No, lion face. Lion
Lion.
face roar. Lemon face. Ooh. Lion face roar. Lemon face. Ooh. All right, break it down. Break it down.